To those who've never heard of Little Robin, I'll give you a quick rundown. Her name, funnily enough, comes from the bird, the little robin redbreast. This is because of her looks, creepy whistle, and, well, one other thing, which I'll get to later. Now, I'll be honest, there are so many backstories behind her, I can't tell which is real. They range from a woodsman's daughter witnessing her father's murder and seeking revenge on the outside world, an angry forest spirit summoned through a pagan ritual, or just some messed up kid that took a liking to being a creepy, murderous little shit. What I do know for sure is what she looks like and how she kills. She's short, like a teenager, hence the little part. She has a sharp nose and the darkest eyes you'll ever see. And I'm not talking weirdly large pupils, I mean all black. Some people say she wears a disguise, but I don't know. That seems way too impractical, especially considering what she does to people. Waiting in the woods, she walks along a trail, quiet and solemn looking. People passing through might mistake her for a young girl who's gotten lost. When they get close enough, she strikes out at them with a blade, hacking and slashing at her victims, their blood staining all down her front. When she's done, she whistles an eerie tune. Not sure why. Maybe it's some sort of lament for the dead. Whatever the meaning behind this ritual is only known to her. After she's killed, she disappears for a while. There's no real way to tell where or when she'll turn up next, if there's a specific pattern or she just kills when she wants. Allegedly, she's been spotted all over the world, the US, Japan, Finland, etc. As per usual, something this bizarre and irregular strikes people as a fake, and I don't blame them for thinking that. But she's real. I saw her. Back when I was little myself. I must have been 10 years old. I didn't know about her at the time. I think the whole urban legend around her was just getting started, so some kid out in the sticks wasn't exactly going to be in the know about these things. It was night, and I was lying in bed. I heard it, a whistle. It was soft and coming from my backyard. I think my parents were watching TV downstairs, so I guess they couldn't hear it. But I was hooked on it. I got up and went to my window. I looked out over our backyard and the woods that bordered our property line. The whistle went quiet. I focused my eyes through the dark, but there was nothing there. Opening my window, I was going to try and get a better look. Sticking my head out into the cool night air, I heard it again. It wasn't coming from my yard, but the woods. I strained to find the source among the dark maze of trees in front of me. But then my eyes stopped on her. A girl, sitting on a branch, whistling away. She must have noticed I saw her, 'cause she waved at me. Startled, confused, but weirdly eased by the sight of her, I waved back. She continued whistling and began to swing her legs back and forth. I watched and listened. At that point, she didn't seem creepy, but kind of funny. After a few moments, she stopped whistling and gestured for me to come outside. Nervously, I shook my head. She giggled and gestured again, still swinging her legs. I think it was just how casual she seemed, despite being in the dark woods, that made me relax. Foolishly, I decided to go outside. I grabbed a little flashlight I had for nightmare or midnight bathroom emergencies and snuck out back without alerting my folks. As I got outside, I turned on my flashlight. Walking over to the back fence, I was looking all around. It was so dark and I was spooked. As I reached the fence, I looked up into the tree, but she was gone. I looked around, shining my light around the branches, but then a gentle whistling caught my attention. She was no longer in the tree, but on the ground, standing behind a large tree trunk a matter of feet away. I couldn't see her clearly as she was hiding and moved from one tree to another. I remember thinking she wasn't much taller than me, which again put me at ease. She was wearing a coat and had long hair. Couldn't see her face, but she was looking at me from behind the tree. Stupid flashlight was useless. She let out a sharp, short whistle whilst giving a little wave. I waved back. With another, longer whistle, she gestured for me to come closer. I shook my head and she giggled. Giving it another go, this time I didn't even shake my head. I just looked around the trees and stood in place. Another whistle. This time, almost like a taunt, and then she started walking back into the woods. Stupidly, and not wanting to seem afraid of what I thought was another kid, I stepped into the woods. As we walked, she went in and out between the trees, always some feet in front of me. I tried to keep my flashlight on her, but she would dart aside if the light shone directly on her, so I just kept it facing forward, occasionally looking around. She kept whistling. It was oddly comforting, which I needed given I remember my heart pounding and my hands shaking. We walked for some minutes. I can't remember how long, but I couldn't see the lights from my house when I looked back. For a few moments I stopped, panicking that I wouldn't be able to find my way home. When I snapped out of it, I noticed that all was quiet. I couldn't hear the girl anymore. I called out, but there was nothing. No sound, save for my panicked breathing. Just as I thought to turn and go home, I heard a quick whistle a little ways ahead of me. I really didn't want to be alone, so it seemed like following was my best bet. I walked and walked. There was no other whistle, not even if I called out again. It felt like forever, but must have only been moments. When from out of nowhere, an awful smell hit me. I covered my nose, but it had clung to me. Ugh, even thinking about it today makes me queasy. I couldn't imagine anything that could smell that bad. But then, on the outskirts of my flashlight, I saw something. Moving closer, it was a large mound. I was afraid it might have been an animal, but there was no movement, no sound. It was perfectly still. I inched closer, getting ready to run for my life if it turned out to be alive. Unfortunately for me, it wasn't. Lying before me in the dirt and leaves was a body. A man, I think. The whole time I saw it, it's such a blur. I just remember knowing what it was I was looking at, and scared shitless at the mess that was left of the body. I was stunned, staring at the corpse, disgusted and afraid until I felt like I was being watched. I lifted my flashlight from the corpse, and there she was. Hair matted, webbing her face, those dark, beady eyes staring at me. Her sharp nose protruding from her hair, opening enough space to see her large, toothy grin hanging open. Her coat was open, and all down her front, from her neck down her clothes, she was stained red. This short female figure now seemed like a giant in my mind, some great predator standing before her kill, and the new meat she'd lured away from home. She didn't move, just stood there, staring, smiling, as if the moment I took my eyes off her, she'd strike. I panicked and threw my flashlight at her. Just like that, I was standing in darkness. She was out of sight. I turned immediately and started sprinting. Running through the woods, all I could do was hope to find my way home. There were so many times I almost tripped. I feared hitting the ground and that thing grabbing me, dragging me back into the woods. I couldn't hear anything outside of my own footsteps and breathing. For all I knew, she could be crawling right up behind me, and I'd never even see her coming. Or maybe she was up in the trees, high above, waiting to pick me off when I thought I was safe. The darkness of the woods was suffocating, until just up ahead I could see the dim lights from my house. I gave it all I could and ran for the backyard. Scrambling over the fence, I dropped onto the grass. I pushed on towards the back door, but as I got there, I heard it. Her whistle, coming from not far behind me. I couldn't help myself. I looked back, but couldn't see her. Her whistle was echoing from the woods, but she wasn't in sight. She was somewhere in the darkness, watching me, letting me know she was watching. I couldn't stay any longer. I got back inside, shut the door, locked it, somehow without alerting my parents, and made it back to my room. I stayed in my bed. I didn't sleep, didn't go near the window. As much as I wanted to believe it had all been a bad dream, it had happened. And now whatever that creature was, it knew where I lived. There would be no rest. In the silence, I waited until morning. Even as the sun rose, I hesitated to open my curtains, afraid I'd see her perched in a tree, staring at my window. But fortunately for me, that wasn't the case. The body in the woods was eventually discovered, and connections were drawn to this mysterious killer set to become an urban legend. I never went into those woods again. Camping was out, hiking as well. My parents thought it was because of the news of a body found so close to where we lived, and as far as I cared, that was correct enough. They wouldn't learn of what their son had done that night, and how close I'd come to simply disappearing into the dark. So stupid. Thankfully, I've not seen her again after that night. There was one thing though. Later that morning, after my little adventure in the woods, my mum came up to me, said she'd been out in the backyard, and found my flashlight lying by the door. As the years have gone on, and I've dealt with that night as best as I could, honestly, for so many years, I thought it really was just a bad dream. But a few years back, I started looking into creepypastas, cryptids, and all that weird shit you find in this part of the internet. That's where I found her. The stories, the sightings, the murders, and that name, sweet and sinister, perfect for her. That's why I'm writing this, so you can know that she is real. Now, it's one thing to keep up to date and share stories, but I know that some of you are a little more proactive in your investigations. So this is for you. Remember, should you ever be walking around the woods or resting in bed and you hear that eerie, distinctive whistle, don't go towards it, don't seek her out. She's out there, watching and waiting. She has a song for us all. That murderer, that monster, that little Robin Redbreast.